Alright, so let's rewind this to the beginning here and look at what we got. So, a couple things I've added that we haven't seen before. One thing is I wanted to put some color background behind this, so I created a layer called a shape layer, and I made a box here, and I used the gradient tool to create to fill the rectangle. So I went up under the fill and I selected the gradient, and I went under the stroke and I said no stroke. Then I went into the fill and changed my colors. This is the one end, this is the other. Now, if you want to do a gradient, not a problem, but remember you're in digital media. And digital media online doesn't really do well with a very broad spectrum of colors, different hues, and very extreme range in terms of values and saturation. So I tried to stay relatively close. It's also going to help to keep your background subtle rather than really making it contrasty, because it just distracts from the element. Now once you have that, you select it. If you double click it, you'll get these two little dots. They'll start off in the middle, and then I can move them around anywhere I want to orientate the gradient. Okay, and then I can use the eyeball here in my layers window to show whatever layers I want to see. So at the beginning of the movie, this is what I have. Okay, so same thing we just saw before, except now it's got that gradient before. Now when I get to the marker, remember we made the marker last time. When I get to that marker, now something different's happening. Okay, so what I have, here's the same file we saw in the first movie, and the only difference here is I've added a mask to it. So what I did was I selected the image. Okay, I went under, got the pen tool, and I began drawing, and when I got to the end, it made it a mask. Okay, now so if I say, you can see now that mask is working the same way that this one is. In other words, I made the mask with that pen tool, and I initially, by default, it comes on to add, so it's showing you everything. It's masking everything outside, but in this case what I wanted to do was actually subtract or make a hole in this layer, in my current layer. And so that's what I have there, is that's whole. Okay, so I'm just gonna get rid of that mask, talk about this one. So here's the same thing, except what I did was I took that shape, selected it, and then animated the path. Okay, so if you look real carefully, watch what happens. So I started with a mask this big. I did a little bit of feathering, and then I keyframed the shape at that size and with this kind of soft edge or feather. Okay, and then I went back to that spot where that marker was, and I shrunk the mask so that you couldn't see it at all. So the mask is the same thing, it's a subtractant, it's a hole, you can see through it, it's a window. Okay, but at this point I shrunk it. So how did I shrink it? I used the selection tool, I double clicked, and I got that box. So I double clicked on the mask curve and I got this box, and then I held the shift key down and just literally shrank this down to the point where it's really small. Actually it's a point, and I zoomed in quite a bit, all the way up to here, so that when I did my shrinking I was sure I could get down to absolutely nothing. And if I hold the shift key it will lock it. Okay, so I'm going to do that so I don't screw myself up. Zoom back out a little bit. So I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So at this point see my mask is still giving me a little bit of a white hole there now because I messed it. There we go. So when I get here, the shape starts at this point. That's its size. You can see the keyframe. And then it begins to grow. Now, the other movie, the one that I'm masking on top here, the sequence that we've begun with, it's now in that time, it's now in that enabled time remapping phase. So it's basically stationary. So all I'm doing really is animating the mask. I did change a little bit the feather as well, made it a little softer as the mask got bigger. And the only other thing I really did do a little bit is it's kind of hard to see, it's a little subtle, but I did adjust the opacity of the movie or the layer that has the scope on it. So it just got a little lighter as the mask began to open up. Okay, now what the mask is seeing is not obviously in the Photoshop, the original rendered Maya file, but it's actually seeing a layer. What the mask is revealing, if you will, is a layer below the scope. It's actually revealing two layers. It's revealing this layer, which is the large needle with the markers in it, and it's also revealing this layer, which is the pancreas, or at least it's this orangey color is representing the interior of the pancreas. Okay, so what you can see really is the mask is going all the way through every layer. Okay, and then what it does is, we open up, we reveal the enlarged version of the needle inside the pancreas, and then we play the animation where the marker shoots out. And that's the end of the demo. Now you can do something, you can come back and add, when that's done you could fade back out, and if you wanted to show the needle moving again, but I think this at least is a way of explaining that we've examined with the transducer, located the pancreas, and now we've injected that needle, and we're now going to shoot the marker into the tissue and retract. Okay, so that's the demo on there. I think that will give you enough information to consider how you can construct yours, and again, you can do this in any way you want. But the one point I just want to review, there's only two really animations. One is the initial one, and let's play this from the beginning so you can see it. So this is the frames 5 through 600, and when it finally gets to the close-up and completes its investigation or its review, puts the needle in, needle comes out, and we've got our marker added to the tissue. Okay, that's the end of the demo.